All right, this is going to be our second video for this week. And we started with the life cycle. So this class is going to focus on the directive in Angular, which is another fundamental that you need to know when you're using Angular to build your front-end application there, or when you're using it to build the user interface. And when you're talking about directive in Angular, so directive is another decorator by using this as directive decorator that we can use to manipulate or to add some custom behavior to our elements on the page. Currently here now I have this content, but before I go into directive, I already have um, this ng lifecycle tool to add more example to what we talked about the lifecycle in Angular. So under the lesson 3 in this video, so because in the first video it was not there, so I've added this line 15, which is this app ng lifecycle 2. And what is happening inside it there? Nothing much. What is there is that instead of us console logout the event, what we are doing now, we are putting the logs on the screen. So inside the page or inside the template, so here I have this text and I have the current count, then I have the loop, which is outputting the text. And what is text? It's coming from this log based on the events that occur. So anytime ng on changes occur, then it pushes to the log and you see the name of it too as part of the text. And if it is ng on init that trigger this there, so it is going to put this ng on init, then component is going to appear on the screen. And as you can see here, once I toggle the child, you see that the one that I talked about in the first video is there, and now the second one is there too. So instead of you to just be seeing the console log like this, then you are going to see everything inside the component. So this is the list. When it is toggled, so the current value is 0 because the value I'm using under this lesson 3 by default is set to 0. So whatever value you are passing to this thing as the first there, that's what is going to have. So if I toggle it now, as you can see, the current value is 30 because that's what it started with there like that. And ng on change is fired. So the previous value, so that's what that thing is displaying there like that. So going back into my life cycle 2, if you see ng on changes, so I'm looking for count there. Why? Because I told you the only stuff that the parent is using, only input that the parent is using, those are the only changes that Angular is going to track on your component. You know, for this first one, and because we are working with age and count, those are the only one that this the ng on changes is going to track. So if you go back into the first one, which is this ng life cycle, so let me go back. So where is it? So ng life cycle, and bringing the ts file, you see that we have 3 inputs, but on the screen it's telling us that it's giving us 2. Why? Because where we are using it, we only use the age and the count, and that's the reason why inside this place I'm using the if to check first whether this thing is there, because later on maybe you are using it there and you put some other input and you did not later pass this one where you're using all right now. Save, I did not even pass it at all. So once I save it, there won't be any problem. The only one we're just going to see is just ng on in it. So the other one is not going to come outside at all. So once I toggle it, as you can see, the only event of fire is this one. And now imagine you have some other input being passed to this thing later on, so it won't cause any problem because it check it whether it is there first. So if it is there, that's when we are taking its previous value and we're checking its current value based on what I've shown you already from here. So any of those inputs, they are going to have the current value, whether it's the first time it's changing, and the previous value. And that's the same thing for all of them that is being passed from the parent. And now if I update the count, you see that it's going to come out. Let me save this. Let me go back to the code. So it's supposed to show on the screen. And as you can see, you're going to see that we have, let me reload the stuff. So toggle. So the current value is 30. The previous value is undefined because it's the first time it's coming to the screen. And once I update the value, as you can see, you see all the changes are coming in there. So the previous is this, the current again. For the next one, the previous is this because that's going to be the previous. there like that, and the new one, which is what is showing here. So for this component, it's putting them in the console log, while this second one now is showing everything on the screen. Again too, and once I toggle it, you see that this thing is going to fire the ng destroy, which is this one, because the ng destroy, you cannot show that one on the screen because the component will have been removed, and that's the reason why we are still using console here. So you can check it out, which put more light into this there. But for today, in this video, we're going to be talking about directive, and just like what I mentioned before, directive allows us to add custom behavior to our element. But how do you do that? So we have these three types of directives that you can always use. You have been using one of them already, or two of them already, just that um, I've not really explained this third one like that, you can create it. But the first one, we've talked about the component. So which is whatever you can do with your directive, you can do it with component do. Two like that. The advantage of using directives is because you'll be able to reuse that same functionality across multiple components. So if I need some functionality on this ng life cycle 2, and I need it too on ng life cycle, so instead of me doing copy and paste from one component to another, what do? I create a directory, put all those features there that directive can do, then I attach it to the element like that. So, and under the directive that we've not talked about like that, we have this attribute directive and we have this structural directive. So these attributes allows you to manipulate your element appearance and the behavior that you have on it. For example, here later on, I want to be able to click one element and it's going to do something for me, even though it is not attached to that component. Every of those functionality will be extracted out to a directive, and anywhere attach that directive is going to take place and start doing whatever it needs to do there. So directive allows us to change the appearance and the behavior of our element. So that type of directive, they are known as attribute directive. And for the directive that helps you to remove element or add element on the page, they are known as structural directive. And all those structural directives always have asterisk in them like that, which is something you've seen already in one of our classes there when we are talking about loop and control flow conditional statement. So under our conditional statement, there like that, you see inside the template, we are using this ng if. So where is it? Let me scroll up. As you can see, we have this ng if, and if you see beside the ng if, there is asterisk here. This is what we call structural directory. So which means ng if here is a structural directive. So anyone on it that have asterisk, they are known as structural directive. But for the attributes, they are like that. So you are always going to see them in this form, which is what we are using under this ng switch. So if you look at it here, we have this ng switch, which we are binding to a variable here. But in general, this is how you are going to see it being used for all those ones that are not going to receive any value. Right now, this particular structural or this attribute directive needs something, so you don't pass it like this. But any directive, you'll be putting them as attributes on your element, and they are going to perform the necessary action they are supposed to do. And if you want to bind them to a value, that's where the square bracket, which is something that we've talked about already. So when I'm binding attributes, the square bracket will be there. But if it's the one that doesn't need to be binded like that, so you just type the name of the attribute. So this attribute here is created by Angular for us, but how do you create your own custom one there like that? So we are going to be seeing it here, how we can create our own directory, whether it is structural one like this ng switch case, or whether it is this attribute one, which is this ng switch in this way. So we are going to see how to create the directive, and in order for you to generate directory, it follows the same pattern of you creating a component there like that. So if you want to generate any directory, so I've already created one already, so we just need to use ng generate like this, then directive, then followed by the name of directive here, just like the way you are creating your component there. So generate ng, generate directive, then the name of the directory. But I always love to use the shortcut by just using ngg. So instead of c for component, then you are going to be using d like that, then followed by the name of the directory you want to create. So under this lesson 3, I already have a particular directory created already in a folder known as this directory. So let me see, where's my, I deleted this stuff. Oh, that's been deleted. So let me create another one there. So how do I create another one? So let me just create a folder. So the name of the folder is going to be directory. So new folder there. So the folder at the top here, which is going to be this directive. So save. Then inside this folder, that's where I want to create everything. So this is not what I'm asking for. So delete this. Then right click on it, refill in terminal. Then it takes me to that place for me to generate any directive that I want. And what directive do you want to create right now? So we want to create this unlike directive. And what is this directive all about? What is there is that anytime we hover on the element, then it's going to do something for us, maybe like change the background color of it, or makes it do something that we want like that. So how do we do this? So the first thing we need to do is to create the directive. So by using the ng then directive like this, and you can name it anything you want. So this is going to be highlight like this. So save, and once it's generated, you see that under that folder it will create the directory. So I don't need this testing file, so I'm going to delete it. I'll only leave the directory file like that. And where do I want to use this directory? So you can use it on any element, or you can use it on any component. Right now I'm just going to be using it on elements for simple sake there, because this is the first time we're going to be talking about it. But later on you can always use them under any component. So down here, let me collapse this section of life cycle, and let me go to the directive section. So I've already have a component created already. So save, and going back to the screen, we should have this particular element coming out on the screen. And what I want to do there is that anytime I move my mouse on top of this element, I want its background to switch. And that same functionality, I should be able to use it again and again on different elements without creating a separate component for each one of them like that. So how do we do that? So the first thing is for you to create your directive, which is something that has been created here. And once the directive is created, it follows the same pattern as your component. If you look at it, it follows the same pattern of component. So we have the decorator of component, and inside it you pass the selector, import, and a lot of other properties that your component is expecting. The same thing too for directive. So we have this at directive decorator. Then inside it, one of the major attributes or one of the major stuff you need to pass here is the selector, because that's how Angular is going to know where you are using this particular directive. And all directives that you want to use always going to have this square bracket around them. Why? Because you are going to be using them as properties on your elements there like that. So let me open this component, so which is going to be this ng directive. So let me open the HTML. So inside this HTML now, I want to use the directive here. So for example, at this place, I want to use this app and light like that. So how do? I just need to type the name of the directive, and once you pass it, Angular knows that this is going to be a directory because it has been imported. So any directive you are using on component, you have to import them, and Angular already know that this is a directory, so it has been imported for me. Or you can do the import yourself, then go to any element where you need it, and you just add it on that particular element there like that. So this is how to use directory. So or on any element or component where you need it, just type the name that you have. Just like your component, when you create your component, you give it a selector, and this selector is what you use anywhere you need it there. The same thing here too for directory, but you don't call it like a component like this. You place it on a particular element. It doesn't start alone. Directory doesn't start alone, so which means it doesn't have view. And that's the difference between this our component, which is special kind of directory, and these other two type. So for the component, this one have views, and what I mean by view is a template. But attributes and structural, they don't have view, so they need to be attached to a view or something that can get, or that they can add on. And that's the reason why that you'll be placing them on elements, or you'll be placing them on components. So if I want to use it on component too, I just need to go to where I need it, and here I will just put app and like this, and it will still do the same thing that I want like that. But right now I'm only going to be putting it on the element. So and once you have it here, this directive now is attached. So but right now nothing is happening. Something is happening behind the scene, but this thing is not working yet. So what do we need to do? we need to talk to Angular from our directives. This is the component, not the directive. So let me go into the directive itself and let me save everything. So this is the actual directive. So the selector here. And if you want this thing to apply to all elements on the page, you can also put some other selector here. For example, if I put button, so which means anywhere you are using this stuff here, it only works when there is a button. So it only work on button. So this is the selector that is going to. So any button that have this app and light is always going to apply it. So right now it's not going to do anything because this one doesn't follow the pattern, and that's why you don't see this kind of a specific one. You only use generic name so that you can put it on any element or any component where you need it here. So now this and light, now we always have access to the element where you are using it. So since I'm using this app and light on div, it will have access to this div, but Angular doesn't give you that access directly. You have to ask the Angular to give you access to this element from that component. So which element did you attach, or which component did you attach this into, is always going to give you the element. And how do you get the element? So here you are going to do something like this: private, because I don't want it to be outside. This is JavaScript or TypeScript. It's not Angular stuff. So here, this is element, so you can call it element, you can call it I, but I will call it EL here. Then from there we have this element ref, so that it can give TypeScript what we're actually doing here. So the typing, and I know that whatever stuff, wherever you're going to be using it, is going to be HTML div like this. But if it is component, you are using this thing later on, you might need to pass this, so that by the time you're using this element, Angular knows the type of information you can get out of it. So when I'm using this app and light now on this div, so EL here is now going to be representing this div. So if I go to lesson 3, so let me expand this, or let me do it here. So if I put this app and light here like this, so by the time he's working on this section, this element now is going to be corresponding to this section. By the time he's working on div, then this element is going to be corresponding to div. So that's how you are going to connect, or that's how you are going to have access to the element that is using that your directive. And whatever you want to do that on that your element, you can always do it when everything is set to there. For example, here I can just console log out this dot element for us to just see what is inside the stuff like that. So save, and going back to the screen, as you can see now, we have this element ref, because I'm using it in two places. I'm using it on this section and I'm using it on this div. You see that the two of them are coming outside there. So for the first one, as you can see, it's showing you that it is section where it's coming from, and for the second one, it's showing that it is on the div, which is on this native element. So this doesn't give you element directly. What you are going to have is this native element. That's where you are going to have access to the actual element that this thing is attached to. And once I go back to the screen again, can you see? So as you can see, so the first one is section, because that's where I'm using it, and the second one is the div here, like that. So if I remove it from here now and save, go back to the page, you see that once it's reload, you see that we only have it on section, because that's the only place it's being used. So any directive that you attach to your element, in order for you to have access to that particular element from your directory, because you want to do something about that element, you are going to inject. This is what we call injector here. You are using, which is something I'm going to be explaining later on when I'm talking about services. That's where I'll explain it better by talking about dependency injection in Angular. But for now, this is how you are going to have access to the element. So inside your constructor, this is old way. There's a better way of doing this thing like that, by using the inject. But we're talking about modern Angular, so I'll be using all those new features, just like the way we have at if, and at the same time we have this ng if. The same thing here too. We have a better way of handling this thing there. But I'm going to be showing the old way, because in our code base, you are going to be seeing this method a lot. So that's why I'm talking about all this way of doing it first before moving into the modern Angular there. So yeah, this element now, whatever you're not doing inside this your directive, you have access to it, and you'll be able to do whatever you want to do with them like that. And how do we hook into the, so the next thing we need to do now, since we already have access to the element, so how do we hook into the element event? So just like the way you can bind to any element event, so here now we are binding to this button and a click. Anytime it is click, we are doing something. So from the directive too, how do we bind to this element event? So anytime a particular event occur on this element, how do we bind into it? By using the Angular way. And that's where this decorator too comes in, that you're always going to be using inside your directive there, and it is known as this host there. So we have this host and we have two types. So the major type, we have the binding, which is what you're going to be using to bind to the attributes. And if you want to bind to the event, we have host listener there. So yeah, this is where you're going to put the event name. And again, there are some options you want to pass later in case you want to receive the type of the event that occur, just like that, our $S event there like that. So dollar event, if you want to receive it. Then after this, you are going to have the function to run. So this is the function or the method to run there like that. So what we are doing here is that wherever you are using this decorator, anywhere you are using this decorator, you are looking for this event on the element, which is going to be this EL. So once this event occur on that element, then it's going to run this your function. For example, here, what I want to do is that anytime I remove my mouse, that's event. So mouse enter and mouse leaves. Those are the events that I need, because anytime I get there, I want this thing to highlight just to put a border around the box. And if it is not there, then it will remove the border that I want to put on this thing. So how do I listen for the event? Just mention the event that you want. For example, which is going to be mouse entered like this. So we need this mouse enter. If you need the event, it's not a must that you receive it. So you can always use the event at this place like that. And the sample as there, as you can see, you have the event and you have the target. But most of the time, what you just need is the event directly that I've talked about. And from here, you're always going to have access. So if you want to have access to that event, you have access to it from here. And from there, we can just console log out the event that occur. Let me just say it here. The event is, so after that I will just put the event like this. So anytime the mouse is entered, that's when it will fire. So going back to the screen, as you can see, it fires some of these events right now, but let me reload and let me comment out this one because I don't want to see this log at all on the screen. So let me reload the page. As you can see, nothing is happening, but once I move my mouse on top of the element, as you can see, it fired the event. So again too, if I go to the second one, it fire the event for that one too. And when your mouse lifts, in case you want to add another event there, so what you just do, you follow the same pattern. You add multiple host listener to all the type of the event that you want to listen for. So host listener like this. So this one is going to be mouse leave. So anytime your mouse leave the element, this one is going to get fired. And what do you want to run? So this is going to be function to run when mouse leaves. So this, I'm just naming it like this, but you are going to use a meaningful name based on what the function is using, always what the function is doing like that. When you are with your real directive there like that. So again too, we can just call this one by just a mouse event leave. So now if I go to the page again, so once I enter, it fired the event for mouse enter, and if I leave, you see that it fired the one for mouse leave. So when you enter, fire the one for enter. When you leave, fire the one for the leave like that. And based on this now, as you can see, we can now hook into that element functionality. And based on that, we can change the appearance of the element, because here now from our directory, we already have access to the element and we are able to hook into his event. So when you're doing it directly from your component, the way you do it is by using this way. But when you're using directory, so for example, now if I put in that directive here to app and light, you see that it's going to do the same thing on this button. So anytime I move on top of the button, it will fire it or any element, and that's the advantage of directive here. So those reusable functionality that can be used anywhere, you create it as a directive there like that. And once you create that directive, any element that you need it or wherever you want it to happen, just go to that element, give it that directive, and it's going to work with it there. So now if I go to my H1, as you can see, it fired enter and it fired leaves, because you can see I'm using it on the H1, I'm using it on this section, and at the same time I'm using another component, which is this ng directory, and it's working for all of them. If you want to do all this thing, you have to be doing copy and paste to all these elements or to different components. But yeah, we extract everything out into a directory, and we are now hooking that directory into any element. And once that directive is attached to any element there, then you can now listen for their event, or you can bind to their property. So later on, you are going to see how to bind to class property or some other property on your input majorly, and you do something about them. But this is the simplest one like that. And as you can see, what do I want to do? So I said I want to change the border of the element. This is just pure JavaScript code. It's not related to Angular. So on this element now, we now have the style. So style, then dot border like this. So I'm changing the style of this element. And what did I want to do? I want to set it to 1 pixels, solid orange, or let me just use blue like this, because do I have other blue? Yeah, that's the only blue that I have there. But right now it's complaining because it doesn't know that where I'm using this in is going to be having the style, because I just said everything that is coming back is div. So I don't want this div. It's supposed to be HTML elements like this. And here style does not exist on element ref because I did not destructure what I need. So late native element, this is very important. They're like that. And again too, I'm not putting div here because the element directly should always have the, even this div too is still going to work, but I'm using the generic element because I'm using it on div, I'm using it on section, I'm using it on h1 and so forth like that. So when you're dealing with h1, so it's going to be adding one here when you're dealing, when you know that adding elements like that, but it's being used in different places, different elements. So I'm just going to use HTML elements like that. And what do I need to do? So just save it. And once it's saved now and go to the page, so anytime, can you see? So anytime the element is over, it's going to put this in, but it's not removing it. Once it's put it there, it's no longer removing it. Why? Because when the mouse lifts, this tag will always be there, and that's the reason why I'm listening for this mouse lift too, like that. So what I can just do here at this end, once you leave, it remove that border. Once you enter, it add the border at that place. So going back to the screen again, so once I enter, as you can see, the border will there. And if I, so as you can see, it's happening to all these components where I'm using directive. So anywhere I'm using the directive, I'm adding this custom functionality to my element. And what we are actually doing right now, we are changing the appearance. As you can see, your attributes directive allows you to change the appearance and the behavior of the element there like that. So you can listen for the click, and when the button is clicked, then maybe you change the color of the element, or you remove that element from the screen and whatever support. That one, when you want to remove the element, you can use this structural directive to do that one. But with attributes, you always use it to change the appearance or the behavior of the element there like that. For example, my input, anytime it is over, or anytime I click on it, I want to do something with it and so forth like that. But this is what you are going to be doing with your directive. So in the directive there, you are going to be receiving, or you are going to be injecting the element wherever you are using it from. Then you can now listen for any event on that element, and when that event occur, you can receive the event that occur in your function that you want to run. Then you do whatever you want to do at this place. And if you need to listen to multiple events, then you keep using host listener for each one of them. So if you want to do this indirectly from this div now, what I just need to do directly is just to use mouse enter like this, or mouse lifts. This is how it's going to do it directly from the element. But when you're doing it from the directive, since the directive doesn't have access to this div directly, so you are going to use host listener. Host means that whoever is using this directive, so whenever you're using it, that's the host. So this div is the one hosting this app and light here. So if you go to this one, the H1 is the one hosting this app and light here, and at the same time too, for this particular section is this section that is hosting it. So, and this host is what the Angular is going to hook into, and is going to be listening for this event there. And once that event occur, it will run this your function. The same thing for this one too. When this event that we are using here occur, then it will run this our function like that. This is the basic about directory when you're talking about the attribute directory. But this is not all. There's some of your directory that can take value. Right now, as you can see, this our app and light is not receiving any value at all. But if you go to this our conditional statement that we use there like that, you see the directory that Angular is using here, as you can see, is receiving a value. So if you want your directory to receive value, or you want to add some other input from your directive directly, you can add more input to your element there like that. For example, I can just come here and say that BG is going to be red like this. This doesn't know about BG to be red. So once I save it, and or let me just say color like this, which is going to be the color. So what if you want to get the color of the line? If you look at it now, I'm using blue color for each one of them. So each of these elements can actually define the color, or the color they are going to use for the border. So how do I have access to this input from my directive? So the same way you used to do with your component, we can use at input too. So don't forget, all your components too, they are just directive, just that they are special. And the reason why they are special is because they have their own view. Like maybe they have their own template. But directive doesn't have template. You have to go and hook it somewhere before it can work. So whatever you can do with your component, you can do it here too. The only thing that you cannot do here is that you don't have views. So here you cannot do anything like templates or styling stuff. No, directive doesn't have all those. Where you can see all those things is when you're dealing with components. So those are the ones that have the templates and it have the styling. But from your template, from your directive, you cannot do that. The only thing you have access to selector. And in order for this one to work, you go and use it on any element. So here now I want to receive a particular attribute which is going to be color, but it doesn't available. If it's not available, so I'm going to be using blue by default like that. So in order for this thing to work, we need to import it. And once you import it right now, so this particular one will be hooked into this, just like the way we used to do your property binding. The same way too, you can bind into any properties that is coming from your this thing. So if I clear this one and type it again, you see that is going to be autocomplete for me like that. So I can bind if it's going to be a value that is coming from TS, or I can just type it directly here. For example, for this directive, I don't want the color that which is showing right now, because I can see all of them is using blue. So when it is here, the color I want to use is going to be green. So from here now, your directive cannot take into the account. So instead of us using this blue, so we need to convert this into backtick first, like that. So convert it to backtick so that we'll be able to add some JavaScript code here. So from there, we can now do this dot color like that. So once I save it, and that's why I set it to blue, because some of them, they are not passing it. It will be using the default value. I don't need to be talking about this again because we talked about inputs already. Now if I come here, as you can see, this one is using green. Let me increase the this into 3 so that you can see it clearly. So like that. So as you can see, this one is using green. But if I go to the other one, as you can see, they are using blue, because by default, if you are not supplying this attribute, it will be default to blue. But once you supply this attribute, then it will work. Again, too, if I remove this one here now, it doesn't work again, because color is not part of div. Div doesn't know anything about colors. If I go to the page, as you can see, nothing is working again. The reason it's working is because we attach directive, and that directive have some inputs that you can pass into it like that. So as you can see, we are adding functionality to this our div based on the directive that we attach on it. And once I go back to the screen again, as you can see, it's working. And for some other one too, so we can customize the border line that we want to use. So for this H1 now, its own color is going to be, let's just say, red like this. So save, go back to the screen, you see that this one is using red. Because I did not change this one, so it will be using the default value. This one too has changed, so which is going to use this green like that. So you can receive the input, but sometimes too, you don't need to be creating extra value like this just to pass the color. You can actually pass it directly to the attribute to that directive name that you're using. So in order for that one to work, what you just do is to use the name of the attribute as the same name of your input. So when you use the name of your selector as the same thing as the name of the input, so you don't need to be passing this color again. So what you just do is to pass it directly to that your attribute. So you don't need to be typing multiple stuff like this. So again, to going back to this side, so again, there is no color again. So what we need to do is to cut this one from here, and we paste it at this end. So save everything and go back to the screen. As you can see, it's still working like that, but this one is not working at all, because I had to do some stuff like that. What did I do there? Did I pass? So you can always do this stuff. Let me check. I will check that one out at input app blue. Let me console log it out, which is going to be this dot app and light like that, because if it's not set by default, it's setting it to undefined. So let me see, mouse enter, mouse enter. Let me reload. Why is it not the event is? So at the end it's just empty like that. It did not add any, is there, but it did not add anything there, which is setting it to empty value like that way. But I'll check it that one out. It's not supposed to be like that, but if you don't want it like that, so we can just return it back to our color the way we have it before, so that you don't need to start having all this problem that is going on right now. So again, let me reverse this one to colors like that. So save everything once again, because I did not pass the value to this, so it's not. So here now, yeah, so everything goes back to the way I'm expecting it to work. So this is directive. and under it you are now binding, or you are changing the appearance on the behavior of your element. And to listen for any event on your element, so you just use host binding host listener. So for the one to change the attributes, what we have been changing since, here we are listening for the event for this thing to happen like this. So let me just comment out all this one. You can comment, you can remove the comment later on to test them out, because I don't want it to affect my page again. So what I want to do right now is to bind to a particular attribute. So to bind to attribute, we have the host bind, and here you can talk to this thing that you want to add this particular attribute if and only if this particular variable here, so whatever variable you pass here, that has a value. So let me pause this in like this. So what I'm doing, or let me put it like this, so value. So what am I doing on this line? What you are doing on this line is just the same thing are going to, for example, assuming it is a div that will attach this thing to. So, and this is your property. So let me put it here. This is just sample like that. So assuming we have something like this property like that. So what we have here is that on this element, you're going to have property, and this property is going to be having this value. So this is what we are doing here. But here we are doing it directly from our directive there like that. So when you have something in this way, what you are doing is that you are telling Angular that on this your element, wherever this thing is coming from, you want to bind into that particular element. So let me bring a more concrete example that is going to be more visible like that. So let me bring this in. So where is it? So let me quickly bring it out. So let's create another directive here like that. So we want to bind. So instead of us receiving the element directly like this, so instead of us receiving the element directly and we are manipulating it through the JavaScript, because what I'm doing here since is just manipulating through JavaScript. But instead of you manipulating through JavaScript, we can manipulate the stuff directly using the binding, because what I'm just changing, as you can see, I'm changing the style here. I'm changing this property, which is style, and on that style, I'm changing the border of the element. So we can bind into that property directly. So instead of us doing it from JavaScript like this, by using the JavaScript method, the DOM manipulator like this, we can do it directly using the Angular method. And what you can see here, so wherever you pass here, that's the name of the property you are looking for, and whatever you have in the value here, that's what you are going to be passing into that property on the page there. For example, let me use a sample here. So I want to do the same thing like that. So I want to do what I want to do. So at host binding like this, and what am I binding to? I'm binding into the style, then the border. So this is a property that I want to bind into, and what I want to do, so I'm creating a variable and I'm calling this particular one. So I'm setting this color like that. So let me just do 3 pixels, then solid, then the name of the color. I don't need to put this one at the end. So this is going to do the same thing, just that this one will happen, this one will just happen, it's not depending on events. So this one is binding to your property, and you can later do it later on by using this in this way. So you can pass the property directly like this, or you can do it in this way. Maybe if it is value that you need to return a function, so it can work with function too. So like that. So we have the style, so the style dot background like this. I'm binding to that, and this one we have a function, so you can always run a function to which is going to be get, then you name whatever the name of the function you want, and you return whatever you have here like this. So this function will always run. Maybe your value is depending on, so instead of just setting it like this, because if this thing can change later on, maybe from this component here, I want to be able to replace this color to something else. Using this method is static, so it doesn't recalculate again anytime the value change. But with this method that you are calling a function, but this function have to return a value. So how do you do it here? So we have this get. What this get will do is that it will call JavaScript, or the Angular will call this function, and once it get con there, it will return something, and whatever it return, that's what is going to use it. So which means anytime this variable change now there like that, it will recalculate everything there. Since it's a function, so it's depending on what is here, and whatever that is here change, Angular will see that okay, it's being used here, and it will record this your function again, and it will get the latest value, and that latest value will be added into this side. So you can call this in anything you want like that. You can call it the name whatever you want to call it, but right now this is what I'm calling it. And once I go to the page, as you can see, it's still working because I'm changing the style background directly. But if you want it to base on event, then you are going to be using this your host listener, then you manipulate the stuff directly. But if you want to manipulate the property of that your element, then you can attach this host binding on the element, and you listen for whatever you want. For example, here now I want to have my input. So if I have input like this, or let me even leave it like that. So let me create another directive down here, and which directive I want to create. So ng gd password, so let me call it password input like that. So anytime this thing is generated, so anytime it is generated there, so let me go into the directories folder. So we have this directory, so I have this password, so let me delete it. So delete this one. Then from here, let me just open this. So what you want to do with this directory, anywhere you are using this directory, what you just want to do is to turn our input to password. So what we can do here is to bind. So host bind, and what are we binding into? We are binding into the type there. So like that. And once we get it, so what do we do? We just do this get type, or you can, since it's just a value and it's not always changing. So if it's not changing, you don't need to create a function. Just put the stuff directly, name it anything you want, and the value you pass it like this. And once it's passed, then it's going to receive the stuff, or you can just pass it as a function. So this function will get called, and once get called, whatever value you have here, then it's going to receive it like that. And once you receive it, then you can go to any of your component that you want to use. So I can just call this my input like that. So by default, going to the screen, you see that our input is here, but it's not showing because Tailwind has already removed a lot of things there. So let me just put a class. So this is going to be border like this. So save, and going back to the screen, we should have it coming up here. But if I'm typing, as you can see, the type is just text. But if I wanted to use that attribute now, what I can just do is app password input. And once I apply it here, save, and go back to the screen, you see now, no, it's not. Have I saved it? Yeah, I have not saved the stuff, so it will not see it like that. As you can see now, you see that it has changed again to this input. Now I don't need to recreate this, but even though this is just simple example, you're going to see complex later on like that. So yeah, I can just copy this input, go to this place, and reuse that same particular directive there, and this is the name, and this is the binding. So I'm binding to the type, and whatever you're using it, if that element have this attribute, it will bind into it, and it's going to set the value. So what it's going to do on the page is that this is our input, it's going to set the type into this password. That's what we are just doing. But here now, that functionality, it's coming from our directive like this. So this is how you can do it using the old way, but there's a better way of handling this in by using host. So instead of you importing all this is old way, we can actually use this at host here, and from here you can supply whatever attributes you are listing for like that. So if it's something that you need to pass this in, you can just do it here directly like that. For example, instead of me doing all the stuff in this way, I can just pass all of them inside this place. So from the type, I can just pass the type. What's wrong with this thing? Don't do anything. Confirm. This AI is kind of a, so what I want to do here, I want to pass the type, and here I'm setting it to password in this way. But if it's something you are binding, so maybe it needs to be connected to TypeScript file. For example, I want to set so this one read only like that, or not say required, because read only will not allow us to edit again. So we have required, so, and it's set to true. So if I want to use the variable that is here inside that place, then you have to use the square bracket. So here now we're going to have required like that, and I'm setting into everything have to be in the quotes. Then you are setting into this required, or here I can just say is required. So it's required, so that we know that the value the name doesn't need to be the same like that. So copy this one, and here we'll pass it like this, and on the page it should kind of combine the required, because it's known property of yeah. So some of them you have to, some of these attributes you have to add this attribute in Angular. This is Angular crazy stuff, because some of these common attributes, it doesn't know about them. So you have to put, any one of them is telling you that this thing is not showing, just add this stuff at the end, because not everything that it knows about all those standard HTML. So some of those standard HTML, you can just type their name directly like this. But if it doesn't know about them, what you have to do is to use this attribute like this. So the same thing too, when you get to your this thing later, when you want to bind to here later, but example, I'm binding required now, and I'm putting as true like this. Sometimes you see it's complain here too. So what I can just do here is to do attribute, so and it will accept it like that, because it's not all of them that Angular will just allow you to pass the value. So any one of those attributes don't allow you to bind into it, just add this attribute there like that, and you'll be able to bind. So here now, if it is just normal text, you just type it directly like that. But if it's something that needs to be connected to what is coming from your class like this, then you have to put it in the square bracket there like that. Again, I don't need to use this method, so this is the old method like that. But you are going to be seeing this method in our code. The same thing too for the binding. So if it is the other binding too that you want to listen for event, so for that event, you follow the same pattern that you know. So you are going to put it in square bracket, then you call whatever method that you want to run like that. So which method do I want to run? So here on click or on what do I want to even do? So anytime you type, so this is going to be on input. So that's what I'm calling it. And again, you are going to receive the events that occur like that. And what I want to do is just to console log out the event. So let me put the type so that the type script will be happy like that. So here, what am I listening for? I'm listening for input, and this is the function is going to call anytime that event occur. As you can see, this one make it easier. So everything that I type here, if I want to do it in the old way, I have to use this one first. So if I want to do it in the old way, one of them is already here. So this is the old way when you want to do it in the old way. So let me move this thing up like that. So again too, for the other one, we're going to be doing here, which is going to be attributes. So we have this, then we have this required like that. So get required, and again here I'm not returning password. What I'm returning is this. So it's going to be this dot is required like this. And for the binding for the also the other one is going to be at host listener like this. What am I listening for? I'm listening for input. Again, we need to receive. So there's a lot of things to type with this one just to do this simple stuff. So you're going to do it like this, not in this way. Then again on input, so on input 2 like this, then receive the event, which is going to be event, and from there console log out the event like this. So everything that I'm doing, here, like these three, the same thing is what we have here. But look at a lot of things that needs to be typed. This is old way. They are going to be seeing in our code base a lot, but all my new code changes that I have now, all the new features that I'm doing now, it follows this new way of handling it. So what you just do, define your function or you define your variable directly, and from here, what you just do is to pass the value. So if it is the one that is static, you don't need to put the square this in there like that. But if it is not static, then you have to put the square bracket. For the binding of events, then it follows the same thing that you know already on the element bracket like that, then pass the name of the function. You don't call it, you don't put it like this. So you pass only the name. Angular will be the one that will undo everything for you. And from here now, anytime I type in or do something, then it's going to come in and do what it needs to do. Yeah, so I need to miss this thing. Supposed to call this stuff like that. So I have it in this way, and I can receive my event in case I want to receive the stuff like that. Sorry for this event, but for all this one, you don't need to do the stuff. No, don't save anything like that. And as you can see, as I'm typing, I'm getting the events that occur. I did not attach it to this my component directly. So the only thing I just put here is this app password input, and whatever that thing happen, you'll see that it's going to start working like this. And this functionality now, I don't need to recreate it again. Like everything I have here, I don't need to recreate them again and again for all the inputs. What I can just do here is to duplicate the input, and the same functionality is going to work on all of them. So the first one knows what is going on, the second one too knows about itself, the third one knows, and the fourth one too knows what is going on with that element. So each one of them doesn't interfere with each other, but I'm reusing this functionality on different elements. So that's why you are going to be using this directive there like that. The other one we have is the structural one. And when you want to use structural one, I'm going to put that one in the next video because I don't want this video to be really long, so I will be shortening the video so that it will be easier to focus on a particular thing at a time. So the next video now is going to focus on the structural directive. So here we've talked about our attributes directives, but in the next class or in the next video, it's going to focus on this structural directive, and at the same time I will be moving into this template reference, because this structural directive actually works with it like that. So that's why I'm moving into another video, this structural directive. So there's some things you need to know first coming from this template reference before you can start using this. Because I need to explain what is an ng template, because behind the scene, that's what Angular is doing like that. When you place the stuff, so it is going to, and the way you handle its own is quite different. There's a lot of things you need to inject before you can start using the stuff. But let me even explain it a little bit there like that. So let me just explain part of it from here. So let me explain part of it. So when you are talking about structural directive, this one allows you to add element on the page or remove element on the page. If you notice our application again, we said this thing is based on permission. So there's some element you are going to see, or there's some element you're not going to see based on the permission you have when you log in. For example, those people that doesn't have the permission to create customer, they are not going to see the button to create the customer. And those people that have the permission to create customer, they are going to see the button to create the customer. So how do you create a directive that can do this thing for you in different places without you using if? You can actually do it directly from your component. Just go there, then use at if permission, whatever stuff, and it will work there. But what if it needs to use that same functionality in different places, on different elements, and in different components? That means you have to be doing copy and paste for that functionality. So instead of you doing that, we can create a directive that we can attach to any element that we want to show or hide based on the permission that is going to show it there like that. For example, inside this ng directive now, assuming I have the user, so this is going to be user permission like that. For example, it's going to be create customer, but the permission for the button, so we have the this thing. So I have a button to create a loan, and here I have the permission that the user have. So here if you have create loan, you are going to see that button. But if it doesn't have that create loan, then it's not going to show the button. And the same thing too can be used in other places. Maybe inside this lesson 3, I can go there too. This section now, you only see it if you have a particular permission. If you don't have the permission, it's not going to show. So I don't need to recreate that same functionality again here. What I can do is to create the directive, and that directive is what I will just be attaching to anywhere this thing is going to work. So the way you create your normal directive, that's the same way you are going to be creating your structural directive. There's no difference. The difference is just what you are injecting inside that directive. So I'm going to use ngg directive, and what is going to be as row. So this is the name of my directive there, which is going to be this thing just asks whether you have that row or whether you have that permission or not like that. So whether you call it row or permission, or let me even call it permission so that it will be easier. So ng generate directive will be as permission. So permissions like this. We are just looking at one permission right now, but you can extend it to work like what we have at Pennage there like that. So I already have this. So let me go into the directory folder. So open it, and we have, as you can see, let me delete all this text file. We don't need all this text file when you're dealing with that's advanced stuff that we're not using right now. So here, as you can see, I have as row and I have as permission. As you can see the way I type the stuff here, it has converted to camel case here. So this is ng working behind the scene, because your name should be in this form, but the actual class is what is going to have that the same way I type it. So as you can see, it has created all the necessary stuff that needs to be created there like that. So what do we need to do? So let's just go to our element here. I want to have a button yeah, so I want to have a button, and here I want to have approve loan. But it's not everybody that can just approve loan. So let me save it and go back to the screen. Here now we should have our button, but the button is not getting displayed correctly. So let me give it a class which is going to just have some basic CSS. So bg red, let me just use bg green 500 because you are approving. This is a success, so let's give it a success color. So color is going to be white, P4 or whatever stuff like that. So save. Let me go to the screen. I have it, but all these things are not arranged properly. So what I can just do here, cut everything, put it in a div. So flex colon and gap should be 5 so that we have enough space in between them. So save, and as you can see now, but I don't want this button to just be going wider like that, so it just be small. So max width to just be max. So whatever the content that is inside you, that's what is going to be the maximum width of the stuff. So rounded 2XL like this. So rounded 2XL like this, which is going to give it in that way. Again, the color of it, the text should be white, which is what I just typed color here, which is wrong. Like that. So save, go back to the page. As you can see now, I can see this button. But assuming I'm logging as agent, or I'm just logging as someone that doesn't have access to this button now, they can see the button. So we need to create a directive that can hide any element based on whether they have permission or not. And we have already created our directory for that, so that we'll be able to reuse it anywhere we need it there like that. So how do you work with structural directives? So in order for us to use that directive, we can just come here and say app as permission. But when you're using it in this form, it means you are using it as just your attribute directive. So when you're using it like this, it is this in there like that. So it is attribute directive. So in order for us to turn it to structural directive, the one that can remove or add element, then we need to put this asterisk beside it. And once you put asterisk like this, you have turned this directive to a directive that can remove or add element. But right now it's not going to do anything because it doesn't just do things like that. As you can see, it's not even showing again because by default it doesn't know what to do. So the element is gone like this. But how do we bring back the element? How do we bring back the element? But before we bring back the element, we need to supply some value into this thing, which is what we are looking for, because whatever value we pass here, that's what we want to use. Or you can just create another let's say later on too, like that, but just say permission like this. So we just say permission is going to be approved. So we just say approve loan. So anytime we have this permission on this particular stuff, is going to approve the loan. Or instead of us doing it like this, just like what I talked about before, you can pass it to this indirectly and set this one as the name of the input. But let me separate them so that it will be easier for us there. So this is the name. This is the name of the attribute, and we've turned it to the structural directive. And as you can see, I'm no longer seeing my button again. So we need to bring back this button. But before we can bring back the button, we need to have access to this permission. So in order for us to have access to the permission, what do we need to do? We need to create our input, and the name of the input is going to be this permission like that, which is going to be a string like this. I'm setting it to or null. So I'm setting it to string or null, which is going to be null by default like this. And the next thing is that we need to receive what we are going to use to create this element there like that. And what do we need? So when you are creating structural directive, in that your directive, you need to inject the templates, and at the same time, you need to inject the view container. The view container, this is advanced stuff right now, but what is there is that the view container is wherever the Angular is going to inject all this in on the page. Every time something is getting removed on the page or get added to the page, Angular is actually creating some dummy elements inside this thing for you to see what is going on. So there's a placeholder that Angular is actually creating for this thing there like that. So expanding, can you see the container? Can you see? So this is what we call the container. So this is a placeholder that Angular used to represent that something's supposed to be here, but currently is not there. So how do we have access to this container here? That's the reason why we need access to this view container. So this view container will be able to be the one to communicate to this and replace it with actual content we want to show at that place. And this template ref, this is another thing that you're going to that we've talked about already, which is where you are actually applying the stuff. So wherever you are, where are you applying that our element? So where are we applying our directive? So we're applying it on this button. So the host is going to give us that template. But again, too, what we're actually doing here, what we're doing on this line is some kind of a shorthand of something that you're going to be seeing later on when I'm talking about ng templates like that. So there is something known as ng template I'll be talking about this one in the next video. Why is it not auto completing for me? ng templates are like this. So inside this ng template, that's where you pass your directive, which is going to be that our app so let me just pass it here. So app has permission. Then we have this permission. Then inside this place, that's where you now have the button. This is what you are doing. So anytime you use this asterisk behind the scene, this is what Angular is going to do. You can do it directly yourself like this, and that's the reason why we have this inject. So that's the reason why we are injecting this template ref, because behind the scene, this is what Angular is going to create. This is the template. So template, whatever you now pass inside that template, Angular is going to create it. But instead of you typing this long stuff every time, that's the reason why Angular gave us this asterisk. So when you use asterisk, you just pass it directly on the element. But if you are not passing asterisk, then you are going to use this ng template that I will be explaining in the next class when I'm talking about this template reference there like that. So you are going to see it here better. I will talk more about it at this side. But we are going to be using this one of asterisk like that. And what do we need to do? We need to inject our template ref, and we need to inject our view container, which is where Angular is going to place the content. So how do you inject? So we are going to be using the old way. There's a new way of handling this one too. So here we need to use private because we don't want this thing to leak out when we are exposing this our directive later on. So what we want to do is template ref, which is going to be the same thing as template ref like this. And what type of stuff that is there? So we just put any, because this thing can work with any this in there like that. Another one we have is going to be a private, which is going to be container. So we're going to be passing our container there. So let me just copy the container because I don't want to be typing all this in like that. So let me just copy everything here, paste it like that. So we need to import this one, so view container. And from there now, what do we need to do? We need to listen for when this permission change. So here now we can start using all those our ng changes, but there's a better way whenever the value of this thing change. So another way of handling this thing, we can just go to our this by said implement on changes like this. And from there now, don't forget this one too is just like a component. It's just that it's a special kind of this thing. It doesn't have view. That's so ng changes here, then we can look for anytime something change. For what are we looking for? Anytime this our permission change. And once it change, we compare the value that is there. That is, we're just going to do this right now. For example, it's not even going to show because element is not on the page like that. So what we can just do here is that anytime this, or let me just console log it out first, so which is going to be testing like this. So I have this testing, save everything. This is not what I want to do. Save everything plus let's just do changes like this so that everything is saved on the page. So go back to the screen and let me go to the console right now. As you can see, we're not seeing anything because it's not on the page yet. So what can we do? There's a better way of handling when this your stuff is being set, because this one will only work when the stuff has already been on the page, but right now it's not even on the page. So how can we listen for when they are setting this value there like that? So you can always use getter and setter, which is part of the class. So in JavaScript or TypeScript, anytime you're using class, you can create your variable. So for example, here now I have name, and this name I can set it to anything that I want, or I have this at input. So let me just say this input, let me bring the stuff out like that. So you have your input, and when the input is there, what we want to do on the stuff, so we want to receive anytime they are setting this value. So anytime they are setting the value, we want something to happen. How do you listen for when this thing is being set? So we have something known as getter and setter. So yeah, just like what we've used before. So we can have get, and I will just say my permission. I'm calling it this my permission, and then like that. So return, and what am I returning? I'm returning this dot permission like this. So anytime you use this thing as normal variable, so anytime you just call it as a normal variable. For example, inside these changes now, I can just say this dot my permission. You don't. It's not a function. It's a getter. So you call it like your normal variable, but this thing is going to call it like a normal function behind the scene. And anytime it is getting call, it will come here, and whenever this thing is returning, that's what is going to return to you. The same thing where we have setter. So set my permission like that. We are creating dynamic value. This is JavaScript stuff, which is advanced this thing. So from there, you are going to receive the value that they are passing. Then from there, what do we want to do? We are doing this dot permission is going to be this v, and yeah, you know that this is supposed to be string like that. So from there, let me see. String or none is not assignable to type of string because yeah, we need to assign it to as null too like that because that's what we have at the top in this way. So from there now, when you call this my permission like this, it will call this get. It will call this one. And anywhere you do this dot my permission and you set it to value like this, then it will call this set. So this is just JavaScript for because Angular is using it. So in your class, you can have your getter and setter while you are not even touching the variable you are working with there like that. So here I have another name here, which is this my permission. Anytime you call it as a normal variable, is going to return whatever you are returning from here. And anytime you are using this assignment operator in front of it, then it's going to call this set. So just like you are creating your variable, but this variable now is depending on another set of value. You can use it to compute something. So here now I can just say plus testing like this. So which means anytime you call this my permission, the permission that is set is going to add testing into it. And anytime you are setting, calling this my permission, before it's set, it's going to add maybe like some extra text into it. So this one makes it possible when the user or whoever is going to be calling this in, you can use it to add something or remove something out of it and so forth like that. So this same functionality now, you can use it on this your permission here. So let me remove all this one. Let me just comment out all this one because I don't need it right now. And for this implement, I don't need this one at the top. And for these simple changes, I don't need them right now because that's not what. So here too now, we can just tell Angular that anytime someone is setting this, so we just convert it. So instead of it to be like this, what we just do is we convert it to set, then we receive the value like that. So I'm calling it value. Then this thing is going to be either the string or null like this. And what do we want to do? I want to do something. So anytime you are setting the value of permission, which is what I have here. So once you set the value, Angular is going to call this set. And from there, you can now carry out whatever you want to do on the page like that. So once this thing is saved and go up there, we're still not going to see anything because the stuff is not on the page. And how do we bring it to the page? So in order for us to bring it to the page, we now need to check the condition there like that. So what we can just do here is that we can just have this thing which is going to be if value. So if value like that, and this permission here, should we make it boolean? So if value, and for now let's just do simple stuff. If value and value is the same thing as approve loan. Again later on you can convert it to boolean so that you don't need to be doing it directly from here. You are going to be doing some stuff there like that. So yeah, what do we need to do? So if the value and it's this one, what do we want to do? We want to call this our view container ref, then create embedded view. This is what you need, not create component. If it is component you want to do, we want to create there, you are going to use create component. But what we want to do is here is to create embedded view. And what is that our embedded view? Is going to be this our button here like that. And what view are we creating? We just need to pass our template ref there like that, which is going to be this dot template ref like this. So template ref is the reference to whatever element that you attach this into, which is going to be button. And the view container is where Angular is going to add this in on the page. So it will take it, then it will add it. Then if it is not, so else, what we just do is to clear. Clear means just remove whatever element that is there like that. And once we go back to this thing, we should have what we are looking for on the page. Okay, I hope my mic is talking again. I lost my mic for a bit. I think thank God I didn't check it on time before it go past this one. All right, let me go back to the page. Why is it not showing? Yeah, I've seen my mistake here. In order for the structurer to work, we actually need to pass a value directory. pass the value directly into it as this thing. So instead of us using this thing here, we need to use the name because of the way structural directory work. Because this thing doesn't create or like it doesn't have the element on the screen. So since the element is not on the screen, at that point, there's no way other extra inputs are going to work like that. So we need to use the same name so that by the time Angular check this, it will do that at that setting. So from there, let me just pass this in front. And at the same time, we need to put it in a quote or we put it in the JavaScript file. But right now, I'm just going to put it in a quote, which is a text like that. Once it's in the text, I hope my mic is talking. Let me check the recording part. Okay, still working. And once this thing is set here like that, so let me save it and go back to the screen. And as you can see, we have our button and I have my console logout too that is coming from this line there like that. But I want to be able to do it through this button. So as I'm clicking on this button, so it's going to be doing the same thing as what I have here. What's wrong with this? Let me go back to the code. So where am I using this? Or I'm using directly inside the ng directory. So let me create another button here, which is going to be toggle. So what you're going to have here is I'm going to have a button. The button is going to be toggle, so toggle permission, and here we're going to bind the click events on it, which is going to be toggle permission too. So permission like this, that is going to be the name of the functions like that. So let me go into ng directive like this. So I'm going to have toggle permission. So toggle complete this thing for me. This is where it's supposed to complete things for me. What I don't need you is where you're going to be doing it. So what I just need to do here is to do this. So what we have here is that if the user permission is create customer, then it's going to change it to approved loan. Then it is not, then it will put this thing back. Then I can just copy this. So instead of passing it directly from here, what I will just do is to paste it here like that. So save and going back to the screen, but this thing is not going to show correctly. So let me give it a class so that we have some styling around the button. Complete this thing for me, AIBG. Let me just use this text white like that. So save, run there, the MDP2 like that. We just put some button around. So again, too is too wide. So max we max like this. So max we W max like that so that it doesn't go past whatever it is. So now once I click on this button, as you can see, it changes this thing, it brings it up, and once I click on this, it takes it back to what I want it to be. So by default, the permission is create customer, and inside our directory, what are we looking for? We are looking for whether this particular value is there, and at the same time it is set to approve our loan. So if the value is approved loan, what are we doing? We are creating the embedded views. So what is the embedded view? So this view container is connected to the page. So let me inspect the content. So inspect this entire content there. Expand the div. At the end, you are going to see that there is a container. So this container, this placeholder, is what Angular is using to represent that element. That element, as you can see, there's a placeholder for that element to come in later on. And in order for this thing to come in later on, we need to use our this view container to create embedded view. And which view are we creating? So we need to create the templates that we have here. So now I told you behind the scene, everything you have is just this. So this is what is there. So this is anytime you do something like this, when you use asterisk behind the scene, Angular is going to change it into this pattern here. So it's going to change it to this pattern that we have here. So this is going to be customer. So customer permission. Why is it not auto completing? Customer permission, user permission rather, like that. So this is what Angular is going to do behind the scene, like that. So this is what is going on. I'll talk more about these templates, ng template in the next class. But in order for us to be typing this in this way, so once you use asterisk, then Angular is going to do the work to convert it behind the scene for us. And we are passing the values, and based on that value, we're using this our set. So once you set, so anytime you set the value, fire this one based on what I explained down here. So I'm creating a variable. That variable can be a getter or it can be a setter there like that. Yeah, I'm using the set. So you have the set followed by the same name as the permission you're using because you're going to be passing the value directly. Then once it's set, when the value is set there, Angular will fire this our function, so it will receive what you pass here, and from there we are checking whether that view, whether the value is approved loan or not. So if it is approved loan, there like that, so we are creating the element on the screen. But if it is not, then we clear the stuff. There's another thing we are supposed to do here, like that. So for example, we can just have it whether the as view, which is a way of you talking whether this thing have the view is it's not much you put it right now, but it's always good that you put it there. So here we can just as view. So if not, and it's not having as view, so it must not have the view before. So and if it is not, then we're going to do as view, which is going to be true. Then at this side, we're just going to be this as view to be false. I like that. This structural directive is kind of advanced. That's why I want to skip it before, but I just had to add it to this video there like that. But we're going to be talking more about it in the next class. So I'm going to add some examples down to here that you can go through like that. And at the same time, I'll be adding some assignment later on when I talked about the final part, which is the template reference. But for now, this is what I have. So I'm going to stop the video because it's already 1 hour, more than an hour